Let's unravel Geeta's world. Hello and welcome. This is the 112th episode of Geeta's World. Hi Geeta, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine.
How's the week been? Like
It's always busy with for me. It has been a never-ending ride of foreign policy.
The word ousted has
Yes.
it's been stuck
Yes,
with me.
Yes.
I mean the kind of scenes we're
We've
witnessing.
seen people come, go, new administrations, new regimes,
Right.
older ones fall, and the latest being Syria. Always happens on a weekend, Anna. Always on a weekend.
Always on the weekend.
And I keep saying, can this just wait a few more hours? But not really.
Yeah.
So yes, Sunday went in seeing Assad leave
Right.
Syria, which
Lo-
is what
Yeah.
we will be discussing.
But lots of things that I really want to ask you is because Middle East in itself is like we have discussed so many times and pegging on Israel, Hamas war, discussing.
But this is going to
Syria.
be very interesting.
This is going to be.
This
very
is going to be a very interesting conversation because
Yeah.
you wanted one out, but are you okay with the other that has come in?
Right. One
Challenge is
dictator for the
ahead.
other. That's what people are saying.
Yeah. One dictator for another fundamentalist,
Right.
an Islamist.
But he's coming. I mean, let's
Yes.
not. Yeah. Like I need
Yes.
to give.
Let's
a
go
brief.
go one by one.
One by one, yes. So on Sunday, 8th of December, we saw rebel forces, storming into Syria's capital, Damascus, and ousting its long-standing president, Bashar al-Assad. Now, reports are suggesting that he has fled to Russia, like Moscow, and Putin is there to, shelter him. So for over 53 years, we have seen the Assad family. First Hafez al-Assad, his father, then Bashar. Although, as far as I read, Bashar was not the real choice to actually inherit. I think it was supposed to be his brother who apparently died in a car accident. So he is a doctor. Bashar al-Assad is a doctor, but then he was the person who inherited, and then he ruled. So we saw during the civil war that erupted in 2011, we saw vast swaths of the country falling into the hands of the opposition groups like ISIS, Kurdish factions. But now with the dynasty sort of being ousted, this episode, Geeta and Geeta is a foreign affairs editor with over 20 years of experience. So I'm sure, Geeta, with your inputs, we can actually understand what is happening. Who are these rebel forces? How will the dynamics change? Because Middle East is very complex, very complicated. So many, Arab powers involved. So I'll try to understand that from you. So let's start by addressing this one point, which I think will lay the basis of our discussion henceforward. So first thing, like I was reading about its history, over the past 13 years, it has been engulfed into this war. But one thing that stood out while reading about Syria is its political history. Like since 1971, this country has been under the control of Hafez al-Assad, which people say that, yes, he was the dictator. And then when he passed away in 2000, his son took over. Fast forward to 2011, we saw the Arab Spring with many other countries in the Middle East, the governments, the dictators being toppled over. But Assad didn't. He still remained in power. So now Assad is from the Alawite community. Okay,
Yes.
it is a sect of Shia Islam. But the majority of Syria's population is Sunni dominated, right? So please explain, how did a Shia leader like Hafez al-Assad and later his son Bashar manage to rule a predominantly Sunni country for 53 years, even being saved during the Arab Spring? How did it happen?
So it's the 60s and the 70s when you saw a regime change from pro-Soviet to a takeover by General Assad himself. And it was Hafez al-Assad who, in a coup d'etat, took over from the Ba'athist party, and then later not just the Ba'athist party, the replacing Salah Javed, who was pro-Soviet. It moved from those governments to sort of a military takeover because, like you said, Alawites are a minority.
Yeah.
Population in Syria, but also a very influential one and have been in important places in the army.
Okay.
So the military takeover took place in 1970, and then after which you saw this cult figure, and cult worship sort of a thing that came about in Syria. And since then, we've seen the Assad family rule Syria. So not getting into the details of what happened, but just saying that, a military coup and a takeover of Syria leading to cult politics, leading to leadership that stems from one family and becoming a dynastic political legacy, so to say, of one family, with power being transferred from the father to the son. It has only shifted or transitioned 2 generations and not more. And I don't think it's going to go beyond because we're already seeing the end of the Assad regime as we've known for the past over 50 years now.
Right.
54
53.
53 to be precise, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I think, I was listening to one of the geopolitical experts, and he was saying that usually, like we saw in Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, when she was forced to, flee, usually when mostly the dictators or the leaders, political figures, when they are asked to vacate or asked to flee, they leave one sort of message, or they want to try to, transfer some message to the people, addressing them through through the military in cases.
Not always.
But not always, that's what I'm saying. But the point here that he hasn't, I mean, we don't know, we haven't heard from him, Bashar al-Assad. He did not, basically saying that he is actually living up to that very stubborn kind of image that he has, and very, greedy kind of image that he has.
That
So
image has become now. He started off with a lure of popularity. He was a popular figure till he started becoming all-controlling. Because like you said, I don't think he was cut out to be or even imagined that he'd be taking over from his father. So he's married, very liberal. In fact, Syria was one of the most liberal countries in the Arab world. And it's unfortunate to see Syria turn into what it has turned, and we should discuss that as well, because if you're protesting the Assad regime and you're going the Wahhabi way, then is it a forward movement? Nobody should justify dictatorships. But at what cost?
right.
Because if you're giving that up and you're allowing the rebel forces who are going to take over, fighting Assad, but are Sunni extremist radical fundamentalists,
Yeah.
is that an acceptable option? I say this is because, Anna, we were in Syria, and some of us have had experiences with, this is beginning of the civil war, and we were there, and you'd see these young girls, all of them wearing jeans, tank tops, T-shirts, and had covered their heads. And that covering of the head was new to Syria because they never did that before. Hijabs, burqas were not a thing for Syria.
Right.
And if you'd ask them, they'd say it is a protest against Assad's regime. If you're protesting a dictator, but also in that protest going the more conservative way, then should that be an option or not?
Wow. Yeah.
And when we were there, we'd seen how in Aleppo, and so on and so forth. We went and we came back to the hotel to Damascus, and everybody said, "Are you okay? Are you guys all right?" And we looked at them. We said, "Yeah." But some of the news networks, I'm not going to name any for fear of being sued.
Yeah.
But some of the Western media networks were playing out that there's been bombing and, Aleppo is in a mess.
Oh,
And we said,
but that's not the case.
nothing of the sort happened. We just went around Aleppo and came back. So we do know that the propaganda war, whether if it's on this side or that side, has been on for a while. And we'll say, yes, it is true that a lot of people would say, okay, so all of these guys are being supported by America. No, not all of them. Certainly not HTS,
Right.
who we'll discuss in a bit, what the organization is, the group, and the leader who's now going to take over, has a bounty on his head declared by the State Department of the United States of America. But yes, the American ambassador was actively engaging rebel forces against Assad. So you do know that there has been a Western hand. And again, nobody's justifying an Assad regime.
Of course.
Nobody is justifying dictatorship.
Right.
But it should have been a natural people's movement, not something that everybody has a stake. And we'll discuss Turkey, how Turkey is involved in supporting the rebel forces. US, Russia has its own interests in ensuring that Assad stays, because otherwise West Asia is completely all West, right? So you have only these countries. And Syria, again, is very important to Iran because it borders Israel. So all this, the land routes, so to say, are going to be a huge, huge security concern if you have Islamists take over. For Israel, also a huge concern. So I'm just saying that, when we were there, we saw a very different picture. A lot of Assad supporters too.
This was during the civil war.
The beginning, 2011, 2012, I think.
Okay.
Just the very beginning.
Just the very beginning. Okay.
So there has been involvement. It has not been organic. It's not an organic people's movement to topple administration.
So you are saying that these rebel forces
were supported.
That's
from
what
outside.
I was about to ask, because there are Syria is not a united nation, right? It's very fragmented. There are 4 to 5 factions, predominant factions who work. So it's like in 15 days, they were able to do something that even the Arab Spring couldn't.
I think it's because of the timing, because this has been happening for a very long time. It was just the timing where Iran did not have the wherewithal and means right now to support and back Syria. There are other reasons why they were also upset. The leadership was upset with each other.
Right.
But Russia, also very busy and caught up with Ukraine, could not really come and back Syria, and that really did not help.
I mean,
apparently, according to reports, they were withdrawing forces rather than staying on.
There were not enough boats on the ground.
In the Tartus base. So
right.
All this led to the rebels gaining ground.
Okay.
And certainly, I think the fatigue of continuing to support an entire administration where the Russians, I think, Turkish administration, all of them, I suppose, came to an understanding that you let him go, let him seek asylum. And it reminds me of the fall of Kabul, because over there also when the leadership had to flee, they fled in hours.
Yeah.
And they got asylum wherever they, in a friendly country. And they did not speak or leave a message behind, because there was a lot of angst and anger against the leadership too. And the message that came from Hayat Tahrir al-Sham chief Muhammad Al-Jolani was very clear. It's expansionist in nature. He's already been saying that Syria is not the end game, that it's not the end, that it's the beginning, and then the rest we should be looking at Jerusalem, so on and so forth. Why do you think Israel immediately took over Golan and they are in control of Golan, but the rest of the areas around and destroyed all the stations where they had heavy weapons, because they don't want these weapons, nuclear installations, all of that to fall into the hands of the HTS. So look at the complexities and the layers over here. So much.
Yeah.
With one Syria falling, so much, because Assad was a problem for Israel.
Yes.
And was a problem for most of the Sunni world, right?
Yes.
But having HTS there does not solve their problem. It just brings in more chaos.
So that's why, news reports are still pouring in that US, Turkey, Israel are still like continuing their airstrikes in Syria.
Yes. Because what they would want is now, Assad left, the prime minister didn't. And he said, I want a transition government, which is, and I'd want to
like
see the
peaceful
smooth transition and normalcy. But what that government is going to look like is going to be very important for the West. Because for the West, it's not survival of the people of Syria or any. It's the common man don't really matter. For them, it's survival of Israel, protection of Israel, preservation of Israel. And no matter which faction takes over in Syria, if they're Islamic fundamentalists, they certainly will not be friends with Israel.
Exactly.
So which is why the first thing Israel did was move its tanks in.
Yeah, so regarding who is to govern Syria, and one name that is propping up, like you're saying, that HTS leader, Al-Jolani. He has vowed to protect minorities, and I saw several, like there's one video where these rebel forces are going inside this prison where many women prisoners are there, and they're saying, don't be afraid, now is your time to go. So he's coming with that, liberal, modernist kind of...
That's the story.
Yeah,
he's coming with that.
He's coming with that.
Because there have been no killings right now.
Yes. But let's not forget that he also
has
a history.
But a lot of them have left. And interestingly, there's a revolving door kind of a refugee status over here, where a lot of people who feared were fleeing, who were absolute Assad supporters or in the government, and their families were taking flights out and all. And there was this another border where people were coming in because there were those who had fled Assad and gone to Turkey. So the Turkey border opened up and people were going back in. So it's a revolving door kind of a situation where certain people, it's not like other situations where people flee, right?
Exactly.
But nobody's going back
Nobody's
in
going,
because the situation is in a flux. Over here, some are leaving and many are going back in.
Wow.
So, the persecuted lot.
Yeah.
So they were going back in. Yeah, so continue.
Yeah. So this person, Al-Jolani, has vowed to protect minorities and women and has categorically stated that he has no plans to impose strict Islamic law in the country. And people are also likening him to MBS, the Saudi reformist Mohammed bin Salman. And analysts in the West, they call him a political jihadist rather than an ideological one. But there is, like we are saying, you are explaining that there is enough in his, complex past to tell that he's politically right. So he can change track when it fits him.
Yes.
He broke with the IS, then with Al-Qaeda, supposedly because he was troubled by their violent tactics. And this person is, by the way, a designated terrorist by both US and Russia. So tell me your understanding, how you are reading this person, considering he is one of the most likened and probable persons to take the reins in his hands. So he is political savvy for sure. And like one expert was also saying that Bashar, okay, he might have directed to, behead people, but he himself with his own hands beheaded many people. I mean, that was in his past. So if he carries that with himself, posing himself to be like a reformist, is it worrying?
So it is true. Jolani has tried to reinvent himself, rebrand himself, because stemming from Al-Qaeda, you come with the baggage. And he not only came with the baggage, he came with the acts and the deeds too.
Yeah.
You know, but realized very soon that that's not the story that people in Syria might buy. So you're rebranding yourself as a leader. Once the split happened between from Al Qaeda and HTS came of its own, in the 2020s, you saw that a lot of de-radicalization programs began within the HTS. Jolani himself started doing a lot of public service within Idlib, where they were basically concentrated. But does not take away from the fact that you still are a group that has a certain ideology and certain parameters within which you're going to work.
Of course.
So, in many of his interviews, he kept saying, our focus is to take down Assad. The focus is to take down Assad. But he'd also, let it slip sometimes that it is also going beyond Syria and looking at Jerusalem next and so on and so forth. So it is quite known that they are going there and how they're going to treat the minorities, what they're going to do with the minorities.
Right.
Over here, again, you saw a lot of them talk about, protection of minorities, that everybody's welcome in Syria. But when it comes to really getting down to inclusivity, we'll have to wait and see how the group reacts. It's similar to what happened in Kabul. And interestingly, he praised the Taliban and the Taliban, after the fall of Kabul.
Yes.
Because that's the same trajectory if you see, in the way Kabul fell and in the way Damascus fell. Maybe operationally, but really not very, very different. And they also spoke about inclusivity. They also spoke about, we're going to make it different.
Yeah.
Because the leadership is thinking in a certain way. But when you come down to people who have grown with a certain ideology, they'd say, but you promised us this, that, and the rest. And so, yes, we want our women back in the homes and not out in schools and working, so on and so forth. And it is true that, things have been difficult for women there. In Syria, similarly, they'd want a few certain things, which is, okay, you're talking about inclusivity, but we do want them to pay for what we've suffered and what we've gone through. So is that backlash going to happen or not? We do know that Turkey plays a very important and key role over here because they certainly are people who can control and who can look at how certain organizations are going to behave. But at the end of the day, and it again is going to be about what they are going to do and how they're going to do it, okay? Like what happened within Idlib. Now, there were protests against Jolani in Idlib, and dissent was not tolerated. There were people who were imprisoned, and now there are protests and demands to release individuals who were imprisoned in Idlib because they were dissenting Jolani.
Wow.
So there are dissenters, and there's intolerance towards dissenters there as well. So how are you very different from Assad?
Exactly.
And how are you going to be very different from Assad?
Right.
So, and that's just an example of a small place he was controlling for some years. And while they're talking about leading a new path and charting a new course, he does come with all the baggage and the liability. And we'll have to wait and see how that really pans out for Jolani. Doesn't seem right now like he's somebody who's an acceptable leader. Everybody wanted Syria. Everybody wanted Assad to go.
Yeah.
But the replacement is not something. I had Jason Isaacson of the American Jewish community with us yesterday. He's the chief policy officer, and an American. And he was saying that while we wanted Assad to go, it would be a real challenge to see how we're going to work with HTS in control.
That's what.
So nobody wants this
Yeah.
group. Also because then you lose control because Turkey finds itself in a very cushy position. Not something that Israel, US would want at this juncture, even if it's not Iran.
Yeah, right. But one thing that is still complicated is this thing that how, because the first thing after this entire ruckus and the kind of scenes that we have seen, they are saying that we need like a very peaceful transition to power. But how are these factions, these four factions, four main factions, like one is Turkish-backed Sunni rebels in the northwest, Kurds in the north and east, Jordanian-backed rebels in the south, and the remaining loyalists from Assad's Alawite sect. How are they? I mean, what is the relevance of them?
Yes. So these factions, Anna, are important.
Yeah.
But at this point in time, you have to understand that it's HTS that is in control.
Okay.
What they get out of it, are they going to align themselves or not, is a later thing. Right now, it is about what Jolani wants and is going to do. Because he's sitting in Damascus. You want to topple him? Fight him. He's coming with a moderate agenda. I'm only questioning the fact that whether they're going to be moderate enough or not.
Exactly. Yeah.
Does not mean that he's not coming with a moderate agenda. He's coming with a moderate agenda. So let's see whether that's going to play out all right for Syria or not. Because Syrians are known, and Syrian women are known to be very, very liberal, thinking in the ways, in their lifestyle, their ways, the thinking, all of that. Is that going to be curtailed because we're looking at Sunni, Islamists now taking control of Syria? And will that be acceptable? And this is not fall of Kabul now. I'm talking about the time when the first time the Taliban took over. And before that, Afghanistan was an absolutely liberal nation.
Yeah.
For that matter, even Iran, right? When that kind of a shift and change happens, how will a society accept it? How will a society be okay with it?
Yeah.
So how will Syria handle,
Yeah.
although they are not minority, they're majority of the population, but they were okay, right? Under a minority Alawite regime that allowed space to women. That might change too in Syria. And that should be a concern.
Okay.
And when I say that, West played a very important role in propping up, supporting what across the border would have been called terrorists, but on this side of the border are called freedom fighters and rebels, it's very interesting.
Yes.
Because these are the same people you'll call Islamic State terrorists.
Yes.
Al-Qaeda, they were part of Al-Qaeda, right?
Right.
But the US certainly did not support the HTS. Like I said, there was a bounty on his head.
Yeah.
And but they did support rebel forces.
Yeah. And that was the follow-up question to you, Geeta, that the fact that if he does become the president, as is being said, speculated.
If or when.
Yeah, if and when. So his status as a terrorist in the West and Russia will be a hindrance. So which country, the US, Russia or Israel, do you think will be the most amenable to working with this, reform?
I think Turkey.
Okay. Okay. And how do you think?
Nobody's going to work with him right now. Yeah, they will have to start engaging.
Yeah.
They engaged the Taliban.
Yeah.
Most of them were on the wanted list. Did they not?
Yeah.
It's geopolitics, survival of Israel. Very, very important. Getting Syria out of the hands of Iran. Very important. So now not having a Shia leadership or an Alawite leadership and having a Sunni leadership. The Sunni Shia fight between Iran and the Sunni world continues.
Yeah.
Having a Sunni leadership. is going to change dynamics
Of-
across the region.
Of the entire
And
Middle
for
East.
Iran, the biggest problem is distance. They're so far away
Yeah.
that for them, and we discussed this last time around, for them, they need Lebanon and Syria
Exactly.
because those are the land borders, connected or adjacent to Israel. And they need them to really be able to attack Israel. With Syria gone
Then
and the Russians gone,
yeah. Then why is it that as
Americans
I have
will
read
have
that
to engage these guys.
yeah, of course. But I'm thinking that why is it that when we saw the during the civil war we saw Russia and Iran helping the regime, the Assad regime, militarily, economically, diplomatically, strategically, everything. But what happened this time? Why are people experts saying that Russia and Iran abandoned and threw Syria under the bus?
No,
Is it because of the two wars? I mean, they are
they
like
were not. They didn't abandon. They were very preoccupied. One is that Iran was, in many ways, not crippled but curtailed by Israel in the recent past. Look at the kind of attacks that Iran has had to face after the Hezbollah attack. And Ismail Haniyeh, after the October 7th attack, they've gone after Israel, which is why Netanyahu claimed victory, saying that, it was because of us and because of our attacks against Hezbollah that the rebel forces could go in and take down Assad. Because Iran was so busy on this side, trying to ensure that Hezbollah is not completely down and out, because that's one of the biggest powers for Iran in fighting the war against Israel. For them to ensure preservation of Hezbollah was very, very important.
right.
So they were diverted, not distracted, but diverted, stretched, and did not have the means to really continue fighting or supporting Syria at this point in time.
Okay.
Russia, on the other hand, quite stretched with the escalation between Russia and Ukraine. Again,
Yeah.
the pullout, apparently, according to some sources and people I've been talking to, started happening way before the rebels had started going in. And then there was an attack on the port itself, right? So that was an Israeli attack. So you knew that there was direct confrontation happening, but the means and wherewithal to contain and to continue containing withered away.
Yeah.
But then again, whatever happened and however Israel now claims victory and says that, we were the reason why Assad fell, they will now have to deal with HTS. And we'll have to see how that really looks for them, because the Israel-Hamas war and Turkey's position, as also the Arab world's position, is very different.
Yes.
So maybe they'd not be focused on Iran taking credit to support and protect Palestinians, but even if it comes from Syria and the other parts, it would be an acceptable thing.
Right. Right. But
for the Arab world,
yeah.
which is why Israel went in.
Yeah.
They said, before these guys get a hold and can even say government, let's just do away with any of the weapons that they can get a hold of, because it will be used against Israel.
Okay. Yeah. So now, if you zoom out a bit, look at the Middle East, see a weakened Iran, a stronger Israel, backed by the U.S.
I think
also-
stronger would be more stronger when Trump comes in.
Yeah. He has said that let the Syrians deal with it. Although I'm sure when he comes to power, he'll have a
No. But he's also said that Israel is priority.
Israel is priority. Yeah. Okay. So how do you see then, just to zoom out a bit and
Let's see how it is going to look in terms of West Asia, because Syria has fallen.
Yeah.
It's going to be very, very chaotic from here on. We are looking at Israel-Hamas war that will continue unabated. Netanyahu is going to go ahead doing what he has to. But he's also very confident that he can wait. Unlike, Ukraine, Russia, where Zelensky doesn't think he can wait because there will certainly be a pullout by Trump. But over here, Trump is not going to pull out. He certainly would not want the war to continue, and he'll try to bring them to the negotiating table, and he'd want the hostages released. But should they not do that, he's okay Gaza being wiped clean, and which is great for Netanyahu. It's great news that, America is not going to object. And America will always then be the obstacle at the United Nations Security Council for the world taking cognizance of anything that, Israel does. So that will become a very, very gory, dark picture for Palestinians. But in return, what happens is that now with Syria falling, we'll have to see what Turkey's position and the Sunni administration's position in Syria is going to be vis-a-vis Israel. They might have taken out some of the installations, but remember, these guys went in armed. It's not like they don't have arms. It's not like they don't have the wherewithal. So they have the means. How they're going to use it is something we'll have to wait and see. Then we have Lebanon. Lebanon, again, is a country with so many factions, so many diverse communities. Is it dissipating? Is there support for Hezbollah? If not, what happens? All this will certainly lead to a more weakened Iran vis-a-vis Israel. But is Iran going to allow the changes to impact it in a way that it'll be debilitating? Is something we'll have to wait and see, because here it's not Russia, it's China that's going to become a very important player. Remember, the Saudi-Iran diplomatic conversations were brokered by China. And those conversations have only gotten stronger with Israel's offensive in Gaza, because Iran has stood by a Sunni Palestinian peoples, whereas a Sunni leadership or leader of the Sunni world, which is Saudi Arabia, did not, or spoke vocally about it, quite vociferously so, but didn't act upon it, because they're allies with the United States of America, hence and therefore. But with Saudi Arabia and Iran having conversations, particularly about this situation, China becomes important. And in that, then look at Russia, China becoming important as a grouping. China will play an important role. Russia might not be that important right now, but again, Assad has been given asylum by Putin. So we're looking at a Russia, China, and India has played a very neutral role over here, because we've always engaged Syria. The embassy is functional. We've always engaged Syria. We were never for the toppling of any administration if it's not organic. We always say, let the people decide.
But an Al-Jolani leadership in Syria, would that be detrimental for us? We should be cautious, or it would be?
I don't think so. I don't think India is in a place where any faction in Syria would take issue with India's position. I think India will try to engage whoever sits in Damascus, as we did with the Taliban.
Right. Yes.
And we'd opposed the Taliban for the longest, right? But we are engaging the Taliban. Will the administration be recognized? Now we'll have to wait and see, because the same thing happened with the Taliban. They've taken over, their policies don't align with international norms and rules, and therefore they've not been recognized as a government by the world community. So over here, HTS will have to then see a smooth transition of government, and if they prove to be inclusive, and not create more chaos, then maybe they'll be recognized. If not, because they've already issued their flags, so on and so forth.
Yes, they have, But one thing, if he does actually stay true to his promise, and become this secular president and not obsessed with Islamism, I think he would have single-handedly, done more to eliminate the terrorists than the US or Russia managed to do. So that would actually be like a story to tell. But just lastly, I think, although we have mentioned Al-Jolani, we have discussed the power dynamics in the Middle East, but what happens to the Assad dynasty? Considering we have enough instances in the past, like for example in Libya we saw, Gaddafi's 40-year rule ending violently in 2011 only with the Arab Spring. Then Yemen also saw this kind of upheaval, right? When Saleh was ousted in 2012. Egypt's Mubarak, Hosni Mubarak, he was forced to resign in 2011. But here in Syria, do you think, because after their ouster in these respective countries, it was followed by a kind of instability with all these countries, not fully able to grapple with the changes, with these huge changes of such magnitude. You think Syria has this potential of being plunged into another infighting? So one thing is this, and secondly, about the Assad dynasty, do you think it's long gone now, after 53 years?
I think it is gone. I don't think Syria would want. See, that's the whole problem. We don't know right now whether if there's going to be cult leadership, a continuance of cult leadership with Jolani becoming the new cult figure. But Assad's family certainly is not going to make a comeback.
Okay.
They're a very educated lot.
Yes. His wife is an investment banker, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's why he was coming with this reformist kind of
even his children. So I don't think they're going to come back. How they're going to sustain themselves, because they'll have to stay in Russia. There'll be no other option.
Yeah.
It's not like, there are countries, too many countries that will accept Assad and where he'll be safe. So what will life be for his family? Something we'll have to wait and see, and his children. But in terms of a future for the Assad family in Syria, it's, I think, over.
Yeah.
There is no looking back.
And if we don't have like a leadership in Syria soon, there's also a possibility of Syria being, plunging into another infighting, another civil war. You think that's a possibility?
Of course, it's a possibility, but I don't think it's a likelihood.
Okay, I think that will be salvaged.
I think it's just about what kind of leadership, right?
Yeah.
We should be more concerned about that.
Yeah.
What's the kind of leadership that's going to take control of Syria, not whether if they are going to have a leadership or not, which is what most of the former leaders are now saying. It's not whether there will be, there certainly will be.
Will be.
But what is the composition going to look like of that government? So that's a scary one. But just before we go, every conflict, every downfall of a dictator or a regime, so to say, comes with a story. And, here there's a story of this teenager who actually, they say, brought Assad down. Now, how did it happen? During the Arab Spring, there was this teenager, a 14-year-old, who infused the civil war within Syria with the graffiti.
Wow.
He took a spray can at a time when nobody was questioning Assad in Syria, when everything else, everywhere else was boiling over. Siasneh, a 14-year-old, went ahead and sprayed a graffiti. And that led to many people then questioning the Assad government.
Wow.
And the message was also telling, it said, I'll read it because it's in Arabic. It says, Ejak al-dur, ya doctor, which means it's your turn, doctor.
Oh, wow.
Which means you're next.
Yeah.
And that's how it all started, apparently.
Amazing.
So,
that's fascinating.
The whole Arab Spring started with Tunisia, street vendor being beaten, and then, it conflated and became a big issue, and then protests began against the dictatorship in the leadership there. And we've seen the same thing through and through when one small incident sparks that fire.
Yeah.
And it was this 14-year-old who sparked that
It just,
fire of
yeah.
change in Syria.
like it said, it just takes like one small step for a revolution to happen.
Yes,
So
yes.
amazing, yeah. I think like this episode, we have talked about how things can look like, but at least the reality is like, I was watching this documentary where these foreign journalists, they were entering, and it was around the civil war kind of era, and they were saying that when they entered into Syria from Lebanon, entire, like all the roads, highways, even the gullies and everything, they are like flooded with these hoardings of Bashar al-Assad. But right now, when you Google his
It's
picture,
all being taken down.
it's all been taken out, and the one image I think that stays is like there's one hoarding of his with his, big face lying on the ground and a man stomping on it. So that's the reality right now.
It doesn't take much.
It doesn't take
Which
much.
is why I suppose it for all the rulers, even if you are a ruler, and if it's every country has a different kind of governance and government. Not every country is a democratic setup, and we know many which aren't, still aren't, right?
Yes.
But you have to know how to rule, even if your system of governance is not a democratic one. Otherwise, it'll only take that one light to fire up,
Right.
an entire revolution.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially coming from a teenager. It speaks a lot. Like,
Most of these revolutions have come from teenagers,
Yeah.
youngsters,
Yeah.
20-year-olds, 19-year-olds.
true.
Yeah.
So I think on that note, we will put an end to this episode. So thank you so much. This is something like this year, as we're approaching, the end of this year. I think when we look back at this year, 2024, when I remember in the month of January, we were planning the for future episodes for this year. We were like, yeah, there will be a lot many elections. 2024 is the year of elections, but who knew?
Absolutely. Who knew?
Elections have been sort of overpowered with these revolutionary, changes. So thank you so much, Geeta.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all our listeners and viewers also, always to find time to listen to us, to watch us. And your comments are important and are precious. So please keep them coming.
Yeah.
We'll keep doing better and improving ourselves.
Right. Please note down the number, which is 8588 966 and there's an email ID, which is pods@indiatoday.com. Thank you so much, and leave in your comments on the YouTube section as well. Follow, subscribe, and listen to every other podcast that we do. Thank you.